Hello, we welcome you in, everybody. This is KJ McCurley, Alex Baumann. Welcome to Full Court Blitz, your home for hoops, hits, and haymakers. We're having a lot of fun already talking before the set, and we're excited for this is week 3, Alex. Man, it seems like it's just flown by. I'm having a blast with you, buddy.
It's been a great 3 weeks now. I'm excited to get into college football kickoff.
Yeah, man. I know we got a little bit of a taste last week with a great game, by the way, in Dublin, Ireland, as we both thought it would be. Great game there. We have a lot to talk about today, but before we do, we just wanted to really say thank you, guys. Our YouTube is really taking off. We've had 1,000 views, I think Alex told me, over the last 3 or 4 videos that we posted. We cannot thank you guys enough. Please continue to like and subscribe. Alex is really working hard behind the scenes as well as on them, making my job really easy as a host. And man, we're so happy that you're liking the results so far. And first thing is first, Bo Jackson. We talked a little bit about him last week. He's going to be honored at this year's Iron Bowl. I wanted to expound on that. We want to talk about Bo, and where do you think he ranks all time when SEC backs, Alex? I personally have him 1 for Auburn, but where do you think he ranks all time in the SEC?
I would say he'd have to be top 3, and the top 3 being Herschel Walker, Bo Jackson, and Derrick Henry in any particular order.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty accurate. The only guy I might put at a 3A, 3B situation, only guy I can really think of that was as dominant for that long was another Crimson Tide running back in Mark Ingram. He had a wonderful career as well. In my opinion, all time at Auburn, I think the second best running back of all time has to be Ronnie Brown in terms of all-purpose yardage, what he was able to do through 4 years. James Brooks, how about an old one for you? Some of you older guys maybe listening. I know he was way before my time, but I know enough about him to know he was a load. Played for a very bad NFL team at the time, and the Cincinnati Bengals really made them very well at the time. Carnell Williams, you could put him or Brent Fullwood, in my opinion, at 4 or 5, of course. Carnell Cadillac, famous for his kickoff return against Alabama in the 2004 Iron Bowl, but he had a lot of other great plays. Didn't have a long NFL career, but was just absolutely electric. And Brent Fullwood was one of the most underrated power backs to come through Auburn. He was the predecessor after Bo Jackson left, went on to the NFL, and he had an outstanding career at Auburn. As far as the Alabama top 5 running backs of all time, Mr. Alex Baumann, I told him he could have some fun with this one and give us his best list, and I'll see what I think about it.
It was hard because I obviously didn't get to watch the guys back in the 80s, 90s, and even before then. I was with the Nick Saban eras. When you had Mark Ingram, that's when I started watching Alabama football. So if you get mad at me because I don't mention somebody from the pre-Saban era like a Sean Alexander or Glenn Coffey, I didn't get to watch those guys, so I'm not going to speak on them because I didn't get to watch those guys live and experience the dominance they played with. Number 1, I'm going to name Derrick Henry. Just how outstanding he was as a running back, put that team on his back at times. It's crazy that he's still playing at the level he's playing at in the NFL, considering how big he is as a running back.
Now, you're talking about a guy that averaged, 7 yards a carry at one point just a few seasons ago through 3 or 4 games. I mean, he's just a load.
He had 28 rushing touchdowns in 2015. It's a SEC single-season record, and it still stands. So he's at 1. 2, I'm going to have another Heisman winner in Mark Ingram sitting there. Starts off really the dominance you have at Alabama with the running backs. Couldn't have done it without him. Like I said, won the Heisman, won so many other awards, unanimous All-American. He wasn't the biggest guy or the fastest guy on the field, but he had the biggest heart at the running back position for that Crimson Tide team. That
caught the football extremely well out of the backfield.
Number 3, I'm going to put Najee Harris. He probably would have won the Heisman in 2020 had Mac Jones and DeVonta Smith not decided they were going to have the best or one of the best quarterback wide receiver seasons of all time. Up there with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson as well. But Najee Harris got overshadowed due to the weapons at receiver during his time at Alabama, but he himself was just such a great running back to watch. His ability to get out of the backfield, receiving-wise, rushing-wise, his elusiveness, his power. He was just an all-encompassing running back for Alabama. 4, I'm going to have Trent Richardson. The thing that comes to mind with Trent is the stutter step ankle breaker he had against Ole Miss where he ended up scoring.
That was nasty.
That's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Trent Richardson. Have him at 4. And then 5, I was between 2 guys here, Eddie Lacy and TJ Yeldon. Ended up with Eddie Lacy, another huge back. Unfortunately, that kind of got to him in the NFL when he decided he was going to eat his way out of an NFL roster spot with the Packers, similar to what Kelvin Benjamin did with the Carolina Panthers.
Oh man, that would talk about a waste of a pick. He was a beast at Florida State. Auburn would know. He caught the game winner against us, being 6'5". But yeah, that's a pretty fair list, I think, Alex.
Yeah, I would have had TJ Yeldon there, but I just think Eddie Lacy had more accolades, won 3 national championships, and was just more dominant to me than TJ Yeldon. Another guy that could have been up there was Josh Jacobs, but the production at Alabama wasn't there, similar to Kenyon Drake. They once again were overshadowed by guys like Derrick Henry, like Trent Richardson, like Eddie Lacy. And that's just the unfortunate thing for some of those guys.
Yeah, no fault of their own. I mean, you think about what you mentioned Kenyon Drake, and I actually consider Josh Jacobs to be probably one of the most undervalued SEC backs of my lifetime. I think because of that running back room and Yeldon and all of those other guys, Kenyon Drake, I mean, he was at one point a 3rd or 4th stringer and would just come in a blowout either way. And I would watch the explosiveness with the ball in his hands. I'm like, this dude would start at Auburn, because this was the era of the post 2013 season and the post Jarrett Stidham season. And our running back was good in Kerryon Johnson, but Gus Malzahn thought he had to run his starter 40 times a game.
That's what we did with Derrick Henry, but it worked out because Derrick Henry was so big and so versatile.
Yeah, you're talking about a refrigerator with legs. So no doubt about it. I really liked doing this. If you guys are listening and think we should do any other positions all time for Auburn or Alabama, feel free to let us know. That's been a lot of fun. That is the end of our opening segment here of First and 10. We're going to take a quick break and come right back with loads of SEC football previews and only a few national matchups. Get ready right after this. And welcome back into First and 10 here on Full Court Blitz. KJ McCurley, Alex Baumann with you. Alex, it is time for SEC football.
I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this since it ended earlier this year. I'm itching for some football.
Yeah, I know. Me and you both. And it does not start on Saturday for all teams. The Auburn Tigers will play Friday night. We'll get more to that game later. How about we'll start with a Saturday matchup between Central Arkansas and Missouri. Of course, Missouri losing Brady Cook to graduation. Had some other good players last year. Was close to beating a few teams and had a few really bad games as well. The quarterback race is probably the most compelling thing to note for Missouri. You've got 2 guys in Sam Horn and Bo Prabula, which both of those guys Coach, I cannot pronounce his last name.
Drinkwitz,
there you go. Coach Drinkwitz said that both really played well in the spring and established leadership, and he didn't feel like he could decide without a little more info. Alex, they do open with Central Arkansas, not a very great opponent. So if you're going to have questions, I guess that's a pretty good time to do it. But should this concern Missouri fans?
It would concern me if they were playing like a Florida State like Alabama is or a Clemson like LSU is in week 1. But they got the benefit of the doubt here when they scheduled Central Arkansas, which likely will be the last time or one of the last times they're able to schedule one of these cupcake games with the 9-game SEC schedule. So enjoy it while you can, Drinkwitz, figuring out your quarterback situation at the beginning of the season in the first game because it won't happen in the near future. I look at both these guys. Prabula has more experience playing the quarterback position at Penn State, had to come in last year when Drew Aller went down versus Wisconsin, gave them a lift and was able to get them to win that game in a situation where they needed to win it to make the college football playoff. Sam Horn's coming off a Tommy John surgery. It remains to be seen if he's able to really throw the ball in an in-game situation because as most football players know, throwing the football in an in-game situation is completely different than throwing it in practice. Players practice well and don't play well and vice versa.
Ask Peyton Thorne.
It's going to be quite interesting to see what quarterback ends up winning this battle. It does resemble the 2023 season where Brady Cook and Sam Horn both entered the first game. Brady Cook played the first half, and Sam Horn played the second half, and we know how that ended up with Brady Cook winning that battle, and Sam Horn once again is playing the second half while Prbula is playing the first half. Might see a situation here where it repeats itself, where Prbula ends up winning it after leading them in the first half, but it remains to be seen. You also can't ignore what they added on offense with Louisiana Monroe running back Ahmad Hardy, led the FBS as a freshman with 1,300 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns. You also add Mississippi State wide receiver Kevin Coleman Jr. He was a stud last year, really the lone bright spot for that program after going 2-10.
Yeah.
And he's going to help alleviate the loss of Luther Burden and Theo Weiss Jr. And the list goes on and on for receivers, Marquise Johnson, and then Joshua Manning, Xavier Lloyd. The defense side of the football is going to have to be better than it was last year, but you bring in a lot of help on that side. Jalen Catalon, who people know played at Arkansas and UNLV, and then Josiah Trotter from Western Virginia was the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year last year. You add some key pieces there, and then Damon Wilson from Georgia comes in to replace Johnny Walker off the edge.
Yeah, and those are some really good transfer portal additions. I actually did not know Johnny Walker was a Missouri Tiger, so that's my co-host being a step ahead of me. So I really like what Missouri added, Alex. I think that the time with the quarterback decision, it just remains to be seen. What do you have as a prediction for this game?
I think Missouri will win it handedly. If they don't, there's some serious issues with Eli Drinkowitz.
No doubt about it. I do agree there. I think Missouri does come past a few dynamic playmakers for Central Arkansas. They're terrible on defense. Let's go ahead and go to Tennessee and Syracuse. Now, this one's in Atlanta in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. I don't know. I think Tennessee could receive a run for their money. Syracuse is replacing Kyle McCord, but they have a promising quarterback transfer in Steve Angle. But I do think there's still enough weapons for Tennessee to overcome that. I like what they still have defensively under Josh Heupel. They were a really good defensive unit. It kind of kept them into some games last year after Nico Ilamaiava. I butchered that, but that's okay. And you make it hard with 10 syllables and one last name. But I think that Tennessee has enough on defense to win them a few more of those type games this year still. And I think Tennessee finds a way to win a close one with closer home field in Atlanta than definitely Syracuse. I think Tennessee wins a close one over the Orange.
I think this will be a blowout. Syracuse, you kind of mentioned it, KJ, with Kyle McCord gone, but they also lose LaQuint Allen, their running back, Aronde Gadsden, their tight end, and then both receivers from last year, Trevor Pena, who's now at Penn State, and Jackson Meeks, who's in the NFL. In a pass-heavy offense, losing your quarterback, your receiving running back, your tight end, and your top two receivers. And really in the portal, you add Notre Dame backup quarterback Steve Angeli, and then Jonte Cook from Texas, who Jonte Cook could be very, very good for Syracuse in this pass-heavy offense. But having to replace so much on that side of the football, they only return 50% overall of their returning production, which is the lowest in the ACC and a 90th nationally among 136 FBS teams. That's going to be the downfall of Syracuse, is the lack of returning production. And I know Tennessee has that same issue on the offensive side of the football. Nico's gone. Dylan Sampson, the huge part of their offense last year, the anchor of it. The receiving room is totally revamped. Brew McCoy's gone. Squirrel White's gone. So you lose some weapons there. But I still think the weapons in that receiving room, Chris Brazzell II, Mike Matthews, Braylon Staley are talented enough to keep it going. Joey Aguilar at quarterback, he's won big games at Appalachian State. I don't think it's going to be an issue for him. And while the running back room you're not going to be able to replace Dylan Sampson in this one offseason. They didn't get a guy that I think has that talent level. But the three-headed monster of Deshaun Bishop, Peyton Lewis, and Star Thomas can help alleviate the running back hole that Dylan Sampson left. The defense will be stout. It's always been stout. For Josh Heupel, James Pierce Jr. and Omar Norman Lott are gone, but you have guys like Dominic Bailey and Jermon McCoy still there that are going to give some stability to a defense that lost a lot on the defensive line.
Yeah, and this is a league in the SEC. Even though they start with a non-SEC opponent, you're playing a team in Syracuse that can shock some people. So defensive line for Coach Heupel going to be a must. I think Tennessee does win this game, and I think they find a way to get it off to a 1-0 start. How about we move to this one? Mississippi State at Southern Miss, the bottom of the SEC, facing a Southern Miss team who can move the football. You know, they averaged between 300 and 350 yards per game last year, which is pretty high among the percentages. 81% chance from Mississippi State to win, even though they had nothing really going last year. They do have a few really good, talented freshmen on each side of the ball. But the Bulldogs, I believe, probably need to be careful here in thinking that they're going to just come in and walk all over, because Southern Miss is one of those schools that you never really pay much attention to, and then you get in the game with them, and the longer you go with keeping it close, all of a sudden they're taking the lead in the fourth quarter. So I think a good start for Mississippi State should happen. It needs to happen, and if it does, I do think Mississippi State holds on and finds a way to win this one.
This is a must-win game for the Bulldogs, considering their gauntlet of an SEC schedule they have to go through. You have to win these games where you're playing a non-Power 4 opponent. Southern Miss is not a slouch. They were pretty bad last year, but they bring in Marshall head coach Charles Huff, who had an outstanding year for the Thundering Herd there, and ended up leaving at the end of the season and having Marshall forfeit their bowl game because they didn't have enough players, because the entirety of the roster just followed Charles Huff to Southern Miss. So that kind of inspires some Southern Miss fans there, is having a team last year in Marshall, having almost their entire roster on your roster now, and you're playing one of the worst, if not the worst team in the SEC. Braylon Braxton at quarterback for Southern Miss was outstanding for them last year, won Sun Belt Conference Newcomer of the Year, and the defense has just gotten better and better after having a pretty poor season last year. But I'm going to go Mississippi State. This is a must-win game. Jeff Lebby's going to have them ready. I really like the addition of Fluff Bothwell from South Alabama. He's going to be what they needed at that running back position last year. I do have concerns about the receiver position, but in Jeff Lebby's offense, where he's going to sling the ball around, he's going to get something out of the receivers.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I do think Mississippi State wins, but folks, do not be surprised if Southern Miss is still in this game in the second and third quarter. I just think it's that type of a game. Mississippi State will have to pound them with just enough running plays and get the ball to the outside late to win. One of the SEC dark horse teams, I think, are Texas A&M. They play UTSA, the Roadrunners, and this is a game that I think Texas A&M is going to announce to the college football world that they're for real. They were in the middle of the pack for me in our first Studs or Duds preseason rankings, only because they do play a tough schedule, but I do agree with Alex's assessment of their big four really in the backfield, probably the best, if not one of the top 3 running back rooms in all of football. They have a lot of different ways to move the football on the ground. I think Texas A&M probably wipes the floor with the Roadrunners.
This could be a scary game for Texas A&M. UTSA was a high-powered scoring offense last year, ranked second in the American for total offense and fourth in scoring. But for the Roadrunners, their downfall was their defense. Like for most high-powered offenses, they finished 103rd in points allowed, and all 11 starters left. That's going to be the issue for them in this game. If they hadn't lost all 11 starters, I would give them a fighting chance. But A&M, 70% of their offensive production, 73% of their defensive production returns. You have an elite offensive line, an elite running back room, a mobile quarterback that's going to put the defense of the Roadrunners on their toes. I just don't think UTSA has enough returning and enough talent to compete with a team like A&M.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Texas A&M is also just good enough at receiver. I think that they did lose a few weapons, most notably Noah Thomas, but they do add a lot of talented freshmen, another good recruiting class. In Georgia, how about the Bulldogs? They lose Carson Beck. He goes to Miami for a fresh start, and honestly, and I know I may catch some heat for this, but just from watching Carson Beck in his second year at Georgia with all of the things going on off the field for him, I think this is probably a win for Carson Beck and Georgia to give a new guy a chance back there taking snaps. Not really much competition to be expected from Marshall. We just talked about them and how half of their team is now on the Southern Miss sidelines following their head coach. But I do think that Georgia, regardless if Marshall had all of those players, I just think they have too much on defense. I think the defense is going to score some touchdowns for them this year, have a few ball hawks on the back end, and can still absolutely rush the passer. And I think their offense is revamped. They led the SEC last year in drop passes. Not a good look for them. Didn't help Carson Beck's case much. A lot of new guys, and honestly, as far as drops in production go, Alex, it probably can't get much worse. So I think Kirby Smart will definitely have his team ready to play. I have Georgia beating Marshall pretty good.
This could be a game where it's close in the first quarter, and then Kirby Smart and Mike Bobo are like, okay, this is close. Let's try to figure out the offense, and let's just get it going. And in the second quarter, and third quarter, and the fourth quarter, you'll just see Georgia dominance like you always do in these games.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment. Georgia can start slow at times. It bit them a few times last year. Jumping to the Kentucky Wildcats, and horrible up and down offense last year for Kentucky. It either looked pretty decent or really bad, like JV football teams getting beat by the worst team in the region bad. And it was just simple play calling. There wasn't a whole lot of continuity because your quarterback, Brock Vandagriff, just couldn't escape anything. Every time he tried to roll out, there was already 3 or 4 guys in his face. The offensive line for Kentucky was just a nightmare, probably worse than Auburn's, and I didn't know if that was possible. But I think Toledo plays Kentucky very close. Kentucky does get a few good weapons, but looking at Tucker Gleason, the quarterback for Toledo, he had a really good season last year. I don't think that's going to not continue. I think he moves the football on Kentucky's defense, if nothing else, through 2 or 3 quarters. I think Kentucky can ultimately win, but I actually, for now, have Toledo in a slight upset. I think Toledo steals one. Kentucky is only favored by 7, so not a lot of on-paper faith in this offense, Alex, carrying over from last year. Is that a fair assessment to only have Kentucky as a 7-point favorite against a streaky Toledo team?
I think that's pretty fair, considering Toledo is the preseason favorite to win the MAC. Everybody loves them some action during the middle of the week, and I'm one of them. But Kentucky, they had to have an overhaul on both sides of the football, and they did that. They brought 50 new players into that program. Zach Calzada at quarterback has experience in the SEC, playing at Texas A&M and then appearing on the sidelines for the Auburn Tigers when he decided he wanted to play. You revamped the running back room with Dante Dowdle from Nebraska. He was pretty good for them last year. The receiving room, that's the receiver you didn't want to lose, was Barry and Brown. He's just so explosive, not only in the receiving game, but the return game. But you have a guy like Kendrick Law come in from Alabama, who I think didn't get a fair shake with the Crimson Tide, and he can be a super talented player for them, help replace what Barry and Brown had in really the return game and the receiving game, so explosive. And one guy that I think is under the radar for the receiving room and really the Wildcats program as a whole is Jamori Macklin. I thought he was going to have a breakout year last year for them. Didn't have that, only finished with 13 receptions and 313 yards. But the year before that, he had 57 receptions, 1,004 yards, and 11 touchdowns at North Texas. So he has the ability to take over football games and help lead a program in that receiving department. The defense, you had to have an overhaul there. Wasn't great last year outside of a guy in Deontay Walker. You returned 2 guys in the secondary that were also outstanding for them and really needed to keep them with Jordan Lovett and J.Q. Hardaway. Maxwell Harrison's gone to the NFL playing for the Buffalo Bills. I think Kentucky brought in what they needed to bring in to revamp this roster under Mark Stoops, and I just don't think Toledo has a level of talent to keep up with them in this game.
Yeah, I think this is going to be probably a very competitive game. I think Toledo might upset them, but I do think that Kentucky can stay in the game as well. All they need is to score a few touchdowns, which they were allergic to the end zone at times last year. But so were the Auburn Tigers and other teams. Next, we're going to go on to Florida. How about DJ Lagway? How impressive was it last year to take advantage of his moment? Didn't really look the best his first time trotting out there, but when Graham Mertz officially went down, season-ending injury, the only option was DJ Lagway. You had to roll with the freshman, and I think, Alex, that could only benefit him. I thought Billy Napier at times was a little bit too much criticized. I thought that he had some really good pieces around DJ Lagway. And listen, regardless what you think about Billy Napier, he found a way to get the Gatorade Player of the Year at Florida on a Florida team that after the Kyle Trask days didn't look like they were going to play competitive football again. You look at the preseason ranking, it's number 15, the highest it's been in Gainesville in several years. I also love the backfield. I think Jacoby Jackson, filling in for Montreal Johnson with injury last year, had quietly a very, very good season. And I think Jordan Ball as a backup, that is one of the more underrated SEC running back tandems, I think. They do get better on the offensive line. I think Florida wipes the floor clean and really takes it to Long Island University, another Cupcake Central. I think no problem for the Gators.
I'll say this to Florida fans: enjoy this game while you got it. This is your one gimme game this year because the rest of the schedule, people have it ranked as either the hardest or the second hardest schedule in college football. You have South Florida, who's going to be a scary team, Miami, Florida State, LSU, Texas A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee. This is going to be your one game where you can go into the stadium and enjoy, not worry, am I going to go out of this game and have an L on the Florida schedule?
Yeah, they do have a really tough schedule. It's reminiscent to Oklahoma's schedule for the Sooners. I think for now, Long Island University. I think that Florida gets the job done. Then we go to Vandy and Charleston Southern. I'll say this. I think Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers could just about play 2 versus 11 and move the football against Charleston Southern. These two, I would know as an Auburn fan, are just really, really dynamic. They find a way to keep Vanderbilt in the game. Diego Pavia, of course, a big story. Getting another year of eligibility, golly. I know Auburn and Alabama fans are just slapping their forehead right now. If you haven't heard that news, you still get Diego Pavia. Look, he slayed Auburn at New Mexico State. So it is what it is. The guy can play. The guy was given another year. And I actually think when he's not playing Auburn, he's a really entertaining player to watch, just really inspiring with his story and how they move the football. And I think Eli Stowers might be a top 3 to 5 tight end in America. He's just very, very productive in everything they ask him to do. I think Vandy might win by 40.
3 or 4 years ago, you would have looked at this game and gone, Vanderbilt might lose to Charleston Southern. This is a possibility. But with what Clark Lee's done, Diego Pavia, Eli Stowers, Cedric Alexander at running back, and the countless guys they have back on defense, I just don't see a way Charleston Southern wins in this game.
Yeah, absolutely not. Too much for Vandy. And we go to Arkansas versus Alabama A&M. Arkansas coach Sam Pittman, who Alex is a huge fan of.
Give me old cold beer.
Said he wanted fast wide receiver production. Well, a guy by the name of Jaylen Brown reached top speeds of 21 miles per hour this offseason, but the concern is the offensive line and passing game. Now, I'll come to Taylon Green's defense. This is a big, long, athletic quarterback, and I thought last year he had some good moments behind a really beat-up offensive line. He ran for his life like Forrest ran for Jenny in Forrest Gump. It was a rough go for that group a year ago, and I'm not sure a bunch of new freshmen, Kobe Brandon and Shaq McCoy, make a lot of difference, be it more talented than last year. Arkansas is, though, playing a JV team, essentially, no disrespect to Alabama A&M, but I think Arkansas has a 99% chance to win this game for a reason. I think the Hogs go 1-0.
again, there's no way Arkansas loses this game, kind of like Vanderbilt. You're in the SEC. You have the SEC level of talent. You return some guys. I think the two linebackers, Xavier Sorey Jr. and Steven Dix Jr., getting those two guys back for the defense is going to be huge for them this year.
Yeah, I think they'll definitely be a more improved group offensively and defensively, but just the schedule not really in their favor, but it is for now. We go on to Oklahoma. Oklahoma has really good talent on both sides of the ball, offense, especially in new additions, John Mateer and Jaden Blue, with weapons on the outside, returning in Jermichael Carter and Giovanni and Jaden Gibson. I think there's enough for Oklahoma. I like what they have defensively as well. I think Coach Venables is always going to put a good defense out. I thought Oklahoma made the best decision that Oklahoma football has made in putting trust in the former Clemson DC. I think he was dominant at Clemson, and I think that he can eventually help Oklahoma. Brent Venables has a lot of experience. He can recruit. He's just in a nightmare conference and schedule. I do think Oklahoma trends upward this year. Just a brutal schedule, but they have Illinois State in week 1. Another situation with a team starting off with a non-Power 5, or they may be Power 5. Are they? I don't think so.
Who?
Illinois State.
No.
I didn't think they were. So Illinois State, just, again, a situation not having enough. Oklahoma goes up and goes out big.
They better figure out every issue they have in this game, because next week you have Michigan. That's a game where you can't have any mistakes on either side of the football. So good for Brett Venables having this game to be able to figure out the issues with the offense and really restructuring the entire thing, and the defense getting some mainstays to try to figure out what role they're going to play this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. We go to South Carolina and Virginia Tech. Now, Alex, this one is a toss-up for me. I know we've spoke about it. I'm not ready to say Virginia Tech can pull an upset, but Virginia Tech, schools like those who are never really great, become good on a neutral site, where it's a level playing field in Atlanta. Could very well play against a team like the Gamecocks, who came in ranked 13, large in part due to offensive star quarterback Lenora Sellers, took the league by storm last year, and probably one of the best defensive players in all of football, and Dylan Stewart, definitely going to be a pro on Sundays. But don't be surprised to see Virginia Tech make it close. They have a habit of doing that. Just ask Clemson. I think South Carolina has a really big sweat in week 1. I do ultimately think they win. They don't have any proven playmakers on the outside. They lose a lot of that to the portal and to the draft last year, as we noted last week. I think South Carolina wins, but as I said, don't be surprised to see Virginia Tech hang in there.
I agree with that sentiment, KJ. I think South Carolina wins this game, but Virginia Tech's going to keep it close. Kyron Drones only played 6 games last year due to injury. After there was a lot of preseason hype with him, some people had him in their Heisman hopefuls list last season, but that can always be wrong. Jeremy Johnson was on that list at one point for Auburn. We all know how that ended up.
Please don't.
But the Hokies, you lose Bashul Tootin to the NFL, who is really the bell cow of their offense, 2,000 rushing yards and 31 total touchdowns in the past 2 seasons. But the strength of Virginia Tech is the defensive line. Kevin Gilliam Jr., Kamari Copeland, Asen Stevens, Arias Nash, Keyshawn Borgos. And the weakness of South Carolina is their offensive line. Only returns 2 starters from last year.
Yeah.
Lenora Sellers, who can work with a worse offensive line due to his scrambling ability and his elusiveness in the backfield. He also loses weapons. Joshua Simon, his tight end, who led the team in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns, is gone. You don't have that weapon to kind of just dump the ball down to when you sense that pressure. You bring some guys in like a Jordan Dingle at tight end. You have Michael Smith there. But not having Joshua Simon, who was your security blanket last year, might prove to be an issue for Lenora Sellers in this game. I just don't think Virginia Tech has enough on the offensive side of the football to keep up with South Carolina's offense.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm standing too. South Carolina, ranked 13th, so good job, Gamecock fans. Your team is getting some recognition so far, but you guys have a really, really, really tricky week 1 matchup against Virginia Tech, and it's on a neutral field, so no home court or home field advantage for either side. And then we go to what I think might be one of the better games of the week, Clemson and LSU. This is a toss-up even for the experts in Vegas. Clemson has a 53% chance to win to LSU's 47. The Bayou Bengals of LSU will go on the road to Clemson for a Tiger Clash. 2 top 10 teams. They have a chance and a good test to limit turnovers, do the LSU Tigers against a Peter Woods-led Clemson front. I really like what LSU has done on the outside in the portal as well as the freshman additions, but a lot of questions to answer on defense for LSU. Really a few bad games last year, really, really bad. And they're playing a Clemson offense with Cade Klubnik, who I don't think is the best quarterback in football by any means, but I do think that he's a little bit overhated or criticized, if you will. I think last year people wrote Cade Klubnik and Dabo Swinney off 100% when they lost 2 of their first 4 games, winnable by all means, bad games by all means, but then they go on a tear to end the year, winning 8 of their last 9. And Dabo reminded everybody that he can still coach and still put together a good team. I think this game is just a little too much for LSU to start out the year on the road at Clemson. Garrett Nussmeier, we don't know how good he's going to be after injury, of course. Brian Kelly and he and everyone else says he's good, he's ready to go. But that can be nagging and affecting your stance in the pocket with a lower leg injury for a quarterback, elusiveness especially. I got to wait and see how LSU's offense rings the bell this year. I do think they'll be better defensively, but I think Clemson just has too much with what they've added and what they brought back. I really like getting Tom Allen on the defensive side of the football as well. You talked about that last week. I think Clemson wins this game by about 7 to 10 points.
The last time LSU won a week 1 game was in 2019 with Joe Burrow. They since then have lost to Mississippi State, UCLA, Florida State twice, and USC. And I don't think they're going to break that streak this year. Clemson, their offensive line isn't the best in the world, but we know what we get with that. LSU offensive line is basically entirely reshuffled. You lose both your tackles, one of which was one of the best tackles in your school's history, and Will Campbell. I know it's a cliche to say, but this game's going to be won in the trenches on the defensive and offensive lines. Clemson's defensive line is going to be better than LSU's offensive line.
Yeah.
T.J. Parker, Peter Woods, DeMonte Capehart, Will Helt from Purdue is going to help stabilize the other side next to across from T.J. Parker. I just don't think LSU's offensive line is going to be able to hold up against the dominant Clemson defensive line. And Garrett Nussmeier, if he's hobbled, if he can't scramble, he's not Little Sellers in the pocket. He's not going to be able to elude T.J. Parker in the backfield or Will Helt in the backfield. He's more of a Mac Jones type player where he's going to stand in the pocket and try to move up and down and take those hits. I'm just all in on Clemson's defense, and the offense will come.
Yeah, and I think another concern is Brian Kelly's play calling. I do like Brian Kelly as a head coach. I think LSU made a good hire. But one thing about Brian's offense is when he throws the football, he loves to test the middle of the field, and he loves to test the outside. And those plays tend to take a little longer to develop, and that plays off the point you just made about that offensive line and with Nussmeier's health. If this guy isn't able to really move and shuffle those feet, and the offensive line is allowing constant pressure, I think you could very well see him make a few too many mistakes. And I think that Coach Kelly will probably call something that he shouldn't at some point.
Always does.
And those Clemson Tigers' ears will be just pinned back, ready for that. And they're well taught now with the new Penn State DC coming over and Tom Allen. I just think Clemson has enough to win this game. And I think they are the favorite in the ACC, really not a great conference for football. I think the only team that can really maybe test them, and you can comment on this, is Pitt. I mean, you're talking about a team that has 3 wide receivers all in the top 5 for the Biletnikoff. Pitt can absolutely move the football. But I think Clemson's defense would probably have them the edge over Pitt. I just think Clemson's going to make a really nice comeback this year and return to what they were.
I wouldn't sleep on Louisville in that conference either, and of course Miami and SMU, with the way they played last year, will hopefully continue that for their fans and their coaching staff. I think Clemson is far and away the favorite with what they returned, but there's still some talent in that ACC conference.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's move on to a game that won't be as compelling. You talk about Ole Miss facing the wonderful opponent of Georgia State, the Panthers. Not really much of a concern for a week one upset for the Rebels. I think Lane Kiffin could trot his third team out there and probably still move the football. There are some questions on offense, though. Replacing a guy like Jackson Dart is never easy, but they retain a lot of their receivers. Quishon Judkins in the backfield also gone on to the NFL. I think Ole Miss may have a few drives where they're kind of feeling out what they want to do, but I think ultimately it's Georgia State, and Lane Kiffin's team should find a way to get on top by several touchdowns.
Georgia State did beat Vanderbilt last year, 36-32.
Okay. Alex is contesting me here.
But I don't. Vanderbilt last year at that point and Ole Miss this year are two completely different teams.
Sure.
Georgia State doesn't have what they had last year. Obviously, the entire roster probably hit the portal. I don't have the numbers sitting in front of me. But when you're a Georgia State, you're in a lower tier conference. You're not going to be able to retain the talent you had last year. There's no way they keep up with Ole Miss.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that Ole Miss probably, like I said, they may even throw a few water boys out there. Hey, put that water bottle down. Take a snap. Let's see how you do. I think it's going to be all fun for Ole Miss. And then we have the game Friday night. My Auburn Tigers on the road in Texas to take on Baylor. A lot of changes for this team, Auburn-wise, Alex. Most notably, the quarterback room looks completely different. You get a guy like Jackson Arnold in. He's going to be the starter, and he's back in his home state, played his high school football in Texas. He talked to the reporters this week about how excited he is to be in Friday Night Lights in a state that takes football very, very seriously. I also like what my team did as far as hitting the portal for some offensive linemen. You go and get 1 and 2 as far as tackles available in the portal in Xavier Chaplin and Mason Murphy coming over from Oklahoma. I think this offensive line is definitely going to be better. And I think if they are better and can consistently hold up the pocket, I think Jackson Arnold, people are going to see is a capable quarterback, tossed in. You can basically say the ring of fire last year with all the injuries that Oklahoma had. I think when they played us, they were down their first 4 wide receivers and their first 2 running backs. And that's what Jackson Arnold was throwing the football to. And I think people tend to forget that when they look at how bad his QBR was on paper. But, Alex, I just like what Auburn put around him. Cam Coleman coming back. We do lose Jarquez Hunter and Rivaldo Fairweather to the league. But I think getting the addition of Eric Singleton just gives another dynamic, a really good route runner, very fast in the open field. Cam Coleman can be an all-around receiver, and Eric Singleton will be able to play off that. The defense has some ball hawks in the secondary. We get back Champ Anthony. We get back a very good season and one of the biggest surprises for Auburn was in the defensive secondary. Caleb Harris, very tall, lanky defender. Jay Cobb in the secondary as well. I just think that these guys can play on defense, and I think we find a way to win against Baylor. I do think it's a little tough to start out on the road, probably a few feeler drives for Coach Freeze, but I think Auburn finds a way to win by a touchdown or 2.
The matchup in this game for Auburn and Baylor is going to be the Auburn receivers versus the Baylor secondary. Baylor secondary, they finished bottom in the Big 12 in passing defense last year. Secondary didn't get better. They're already down a corner, and their starting safety Devin Turner was out for the season after tearing his ACL in the spring. The secondary struggled last year, going to struggle this year, but can Arnold and the offense take that and run with it? Or are they going to struggle? Is Jackson Arnold going to be hampered by the pass rush of Baylor. Is he going to throw hospital balls like Peyton Thorne did last year?
Please no.
Is Hugh Freeze and the 3 offensive coordinators he has going to make the right play calls to put him in the position to succeed? That's my concern with Auburn. Is Baylor has a weakness, but can Auburn capitalize on that weakness and get the ball to the receivers and take over when they need to? Baylor, their offense is going to be scary for Auburn. The defense for the Tigers, Sawyer Robertson at quarterback, Bryson Washington at running back, veteran offensive line, Josh Cameron at receiver, Kobe Prentice comes over from Alabama. I'm sitting here thinking, I think Jackson Arnold gets it done at Auburn and they win this first game. It's a must-win for Auburn.
Yeah. I think you're right, and I think this is the make or break season for Coach Freeze as well with this group, all the talent you acquired in the offseason. If you don't find a way to win at least 8 to 9 games with this group, I think you'll be seeing people chase him out of Jordan-Hare and out of the Plains ultimately. I do think Auburn gets it done. And how about Alabama starting off this year on the road as well? Some cloudy conditions expected, most likely going to rain. New quarterback situation for Alabama, kind of reminiscent to the Tigers with Ty Simpson, another revamped offensive line, now experienced. Did have a few things last year with Jalen Milroe running for his life. I think that'll probably be cleaned up this year. Coach DeBoer has had another year to kind of stabilize that unit up front. And even without Jam Miller, who is going to be out with a collarbone injury, I think the Tide will find their next emerging good running back in the backfield with next man up mentality. You just got to go out there and get it done. Still got Ryan Williams at receiver. I think the big thing for Alabama, though, this year is if their offensive line and passing game is good, teams are going to be in trouble because of the defense that Alabama has, and that pains me to say as an Auburn fan, but you return a lot of your production last year. A system last year that was questionable at times in late game moments, discipline on defense questionable at times in late game moments. I think a lot of that gets cleaned up, and even in the messy conditions in the rain, even without Jam Miller, I do think the Tide find a way to get it done against the Noles.
You mentioned Jam Miller is out for this game, but also Tim Keenan, defensive tackle, underwent tightrope surgery this week. He's going to be out for multiple games. Tua is out, I believe, for 26 or 27. Brock Bowers was out for 27 days after suffering or having that surgery done for them. Losing him is going to be massive for that defensive line. That was one of the weaker points for this Crimson Tide team is the depth behind Tim Keenan. And it's going to get tested in game one. James Smith, Jordan Renaud, they're going to have to get playing time. They're going to have to come in and help alleviate that loss that Tim Keenan left. You mentioned Jam Miller. The offense under Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb at Washington in the 2023 season when they made the Natty, they saw a player from every position in the offensive group get drafted except running back. And they were still top 7 in scoring offense and top 2 in offense in total yards. Dylan Johnson was that running back coming over from Mississippi State. He actually was not the anticipated starter. When they were supposed to start, Cameron Davis missed the entire season with a knee injury. Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb are not unknown to this right now. They've had experiences with this with their running back going down with an injury. Difference here is the talent behind Jam Miller, I think, is better than the talent behind Cameron Davis at Washington, and they'll be able to alleviate that issue in this game. The keys for Alabama, as I was sitting down doing this prep and thinking about the way they played last year and the way they need to play against the Florida State offense under Gus Malzahn, is they're going to have to be disciplined. I see a lot of similarities between Gus Malzahn's offense and Vanderbilt's offense last year. A lot of RPO, a lot of trying to disguise things, get in motion, keep defenders' eyes in the wrong places. And Alabama struggled last year in the Vanderbilt game where they would have that option and they would be diving down into a hole and they would be overcommitted. And then, there's Diego Pavia for 50 yards down the field. Your eyes from the backfield. There's the receiver 50 yards down the field for a touchdown because the safety's watching the backfield.
And it's too late.
It's too late to recover. They have to be disciplined in this game, playing a quarterback like Thomas Castellanos, who you're going to have to contain his scrambling ability. That's been a downfall for Alabama teams is defending against scrambling quarterbacks. Obviously, it's different. Nick Saban's not there anymore. Kirby Smart's not there anymore. Defense is completely reworked scheme-wise and staff-wise. But that's still going to be an issue is containing him. You have to be able to do that. The Tide struggled numerous times last year containing scrambling quarterbacks, Diego Pavia being the most notable one. And you have to avoid getting beat down the field by the speed of a guy like Squirrel White, who did that at Tennessee to Alabama tons of times a couple years ago. That's the three keys for the Crimson Tide: is be disciplined on defense, contain the scrambling ability of Thomas Castellanos, and avoid getting beat down the field by the speed at receiver. And I think the defense will be fine. The offense will take care of itself. I have full trust in Ty Simpson. Even if they force him to win the football game and take away that running game, he'll be able to do that because the weapons he has at receiver are so plentiful, even beyond Jeremy Bernard, Isaiah Horton, and Ryan Williams.
Yeah, we'll just have to see how both teams from the state handle new quarterback situations. Auburn's game Friday, Alabama game Saturday, correct?
Yes.
Yes. There's some Labor Day games this weekend all over the place. On to the next game for this competitive opening weekend. Notre Dame and Miami, top 10 clashing on Sunday. Alex, Sunday football in college always feels a little bit different. It's funny, it's unusual, but it gives you something to look forward to, and a good game between Notre Dame and Miami. I think it's going to be close, probably low scoring. I think both defenses will probably have a good showing. I think Notre Dame's running game gets going, but I also think Carson Beck has a good redemption game in his first game as a Hurricane. I think Miami finds a way to win.
I'm not a believer in Carson Beck. Said it last week in his revamped offense for Miami. Mark Fletcher at running back, C.J. Daniels and Ray Joseph at receiver. Alex Baumann actually at tight end, not me. I'm not playing tight end for the Miami Hurricanes, but we do have the same name. He just doesn't have two ends in his Baumann. He just has one. I'm not a believer in them, and if they're not as good as the weapons he had last year at Georgia, he's going to struggle even more than he did last year. He was pitiful at times last year, forcing the football into places it didn't need to be forced to, making bad decisions. I mean, it was horrid. And for the Miami Hurricanes, Cam Ward carried that offense numerous times last year, won them tons of football games, and Carson Beck does not possess that same ability to go out in the 2 minutes they need to win the football game, march down the field, and score. He does not possess that same ability. He doesn't have that same moxie that a guy like Cam Ward had. The defense for Miami is going to be super talented. I think Mario Cristobal did a great job in the transfer portal addressing those issues, and also brought in Minnesota defense coordinator Corey Heatherman, who led a above average defense for the Gophers last year. But I'm just in love with Notre Dame. I know the quarterback situation's a question mark with C.J. Carr. The pieces around him, it's hard not to see him be able to succeed. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price at running back, Jaden Greathouse, Malachi Fields, Will Pauling at receiver, Cooper Flanagan and Eli Raridan at tight end. I would argue this is the best weapons a quarterback has had at Notre Dame since pre-Brian Kelly, and all-encompassing. Now, Brian Kelly has had some weapons here and there, like who am I thinking? Willie Snead, I think, was there at one point.
Will Fuller.
It's not Willie Snead, it's Will Fuller, correct. The offense is the best it's ever been. The question marks at quarterback. The defense is super, super good. You lose some key pieces on that defensive line, but you still have a guy in Bryce Young who can take over a game at that edge position. The linebackers, you lose Jack Kaiser, who's your leading tackler, but you still have guys like Jalen Snead, Drake Bowen, and Jaden Osbury who are still super talented and can worry about, and you don't have to worry about that huge loss. In the DB room, Devonta Smith, Christian Gray, and Leonard Moore, they could finish the season as the best DB room in the country.
Yeah, this is going to be a really competitive game. I think it's the second best game of the weekend, behind only this one, the one everybody's talking about, Texas and Ohio State. Saturday morning, 11 o'clock games for it being as good teams that are on the field with Texas and Ohio State. It really kind of irritates me. Honestly, I wish they'd play the best teams at 2 o'clock, but early morning game. I think the hype around Arch Manning is real. I think the kid can absolutely play. I just don't know if the weapons around him are ready for an Ohio State defense, but that Ohio State defense is revamped. I think that Texas does find a way to win this game, but, man, this is going to be a really good game, I believe, between these two teams, and I'm really glad that this is an opening week game. I love seeing good clashes in week one. Bring us some excitement in the week one slate, and it's happening here, Texas and Ohio State. I've got the horns.
Two teams with questions at quarterback. Texas, you have Arch Manning, so people say that's really not a question mark. Ohio State, you have Julian Sain at quarterback. Both guys have so many weapons around them. Arch Manning has the running back room of Jarrett Gibson, C.J. Baxter, and Wisner. Some receiver weapons like Jamie French and Khalil Lockett, DeAndre Moore, and Ryan Wingo are back. You also bring in Jack Entreaties from Cal to replace Gunnar Helm at tight end. Your offensive line lost 4 or 5 starters. That's the big issue for Texas, and people have identified that over all platforms, is the offensive line. Can it help Arch Manning? And it was great last year at times, but it was also poor at times. And I think that Steve Sarkisian has done a great job in the portal addressing the holes that they have there with 4 of their 5 starters gone. The defense, I don't see any issues there. Anthony Hill Jr. is back. Colin Simmons is back. Trey Moore's back. Ethan Burke's still there. The cornerback room, you lost a couple of guys to the NFL draft. The biggest one being Jade Barron, who won the Jim Thorpe Award last year. But you have guys returning like Malik Muhammad and Michael Taffy who can help alleviate that issue. Ryan Niblett, Jelani McDonald, Kobe Blacker back at DB, and then Grayson Littleton, who's a freshman, was actually listed as the starting nickelback, is going to be a weak point for the defense, being a freshman. And Derek Williams is now back at safety after having season-ending knee injury last year. Ohio State, people harp on it all offseason. The returning production is just not there. You still have Jeremiah Smith back, but your offensive line, you lose so many pieces of that. Donovan Jackson's gone. 4 of your 5 starters as a whole are gone. There was times last year where Donovan Jackson, who was an offensive guard, actually had to kick out to left tackle due to injuries. The defense that finished number 1 in the country is 8 of the 11 starters are gone. There is some studs at linebacker like C.J. Hicks and Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles. In the defensive backfield, you have Davison Igbehosen, Jermaine Matthews Jr., and Caleb Downs, and then 5-star Devin Sanchez, but a new DC and Matt Patricia. I think the difference in this game is going to be Texas's run game is going to be able to dominate the Ohio State defensive line, which is totally reshuffled and lost so many key pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to be a really big question mark. Texas's offensive line, obviously, a few really good players last year, most notably Calvin Banks. We're going to take a quick break one more time and come back with the last final blitz at the buzzer. It'll just be That's Tougher Enough this week. We've got some funny stuff lined up for you. Don't miss it right after this. And welcome back into the final blitz of the buzzer here on Full Court Blitz. KJ McCurley, Alex Baumann. We've had a very fun time this week talking about the big games and the big news. Now it's time for the show that we've had a lot of comments on. That's tougher, that's enough. We debate a couple trending sports topics. We've got some funny stuff lined up for you this week. Alex, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Number 1, I'm sure you've heard it by now. It was only posted to every platform that exists, but Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift have officially pledged to tie the knot. They are engaged. Alex, before I ask you if this is tough or this is enough, I think the only tough thing about this for me is that, and I'm sorry to all the Swifties out there, but the only thing tough about this for me is that Travis Kelce will now have to hear Taylor Swift sing for the rest of his life, and I do not envy him for that one. I think this is, I have seen enough. Please just stop talking about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. I will say this. I think the Chiefs can sustain another Super Bowl appearance. I don't think it's going to be a major distraction. Most guys on the team seem to be happy for him. All jokes aside, I do wish him the best, but I'm not a Taylor Swift fan.
Taylor Swift's the reason I didn't watch the Super Bowl last year. Because every time Travis Kelce does something, who do they show?
Taylor Swift clapping for him.
It's football. It's not a pop concert. I don't want to see Taylor Swift on my screen 15 times in a football game.
Because nobody else has a supportive girlfriend in the stands player-wise, right?
Exactly. Why don't we show Jawan Taylor's wife in the stands, or whoever might be, have a wife in the stands or a kid? Why don't we cut to them every 2 seconds they do something good?
Yeah, no doubt about it.
It's enough. It's enough of this. I'm glad they found each other. I'm glad they're engaged. I'm glad they're happy. But I've seen enough of them on social media.
Yeah, no kidding. I agree with that sentiment. Number 2, And this will be the last one, only 2 points today. This is kind of a 2-1 point, though. Sam Howell and Kenny Pickett now have the record for the most times being traded within the first 2 to 3 seasons. Obviously, Kenny Pickett, latest news, headed to Las Vegas to back up Geno Smith, moving Shedeur Sanders to Cleveland's quarterback 3. Alex, is it a good decision to move on from Kenny Pickett? Is he as bust worthy as of now, as they say? We're not going to talk about Sam Howell. That one kind of takes care of itself. Are either of them still tough? Do you see either of them having any type of sustainability at the NFL level?
I don't. I think it's enough for both these guys. They're going to be career backups. They've had their chances to succeed at the NFL level, have not hit those opportunities. Kenny Pickett in Pittsburgh, Sam Howell when he was at Washington. I'm not a big fan of either of them. They come from one of the worst, if not the worst, quarterback draft class of all time in 2022. Just to name the quarterbacks that were drafted: Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, Bailey Zappi, Sam Howell, Brock Purdy, Chris Oludokun, and Skylar Thompson. And Brock Purdy is the only player of that list I just named that's still with the team that drafted him.
End of list. Wow, that's pretty rough. No kidding there. These two quarterbacks, I think I've seen enough of as well. I think that the Browns definitely made a good decision to move on from Kenny Pickett. Well, that's all we've got for tonight. This was the final Blitz at the buzzer. We appreciate you for hanging out with us here on Full Court Blitz. Tune in next week. Thank you.